If you're getting ready for one of the world's most competitive exams, you already know it's about way more than just studying. It's about strategy. So today, we're not just going to talk about the JEE main, we're going to crack it wide open. We're deconstructing a single day's exam papers to find the patterns, the pitfalls, and really, the path to success. So let's dive in. This is the real question, isn't it? It's not just about what subjects are on the test, but how they're tested. What is it that makes one section a total time trap and another a massive score booster? Well, by the end of this, you won't just see the questions, you'll see the whole strategy behind them. All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the sheer scale of the JEE gauntlet. Then, we'll get the verdict on the January 21st exam, comparing the morning and afternoon shifts. After that, it's the subject showdown, maths, physics, and chem head-to-head. Then, we get our hands dirty and go inside some real problems. And finally, we'll wrap it all up into a winning strategy that you can actually use. So, first things first, a quick reality check. The JEE main is the one and only gateway to India's top engineering colleges. It's a true gauntlet where your strategy matters just as much as your knowledge. The competition is, famously fierce, which is exactly why understanding the exam's DNA is so critical. Okay, let's zoom in on our case study for today. January 21st. You've got two shifts of students, morning and afternoon, facing the same beast. But, and this is key, they had slightly different experiences. So, what was the verdict from the front lines? The consensus from students and experts was pretty clear. Both shifts were rated moderate overall, but with one huge difference. The morning shift felt pretty balanced. The afternoon paper, though, it felt tougher. And for one big reason, a super lengthy, time-consuming mathematics section that just threw a lot of students completely off their game. It's a perfect example of how one section can totally change the feel of the entire test. So let's dive deeper into that dynamic. It is time for the subject showdown. See, each section, maths, physics, and chemistry, it really had its own personality on exam day. And understanding these personalities is the absolute key to building a smart prep strategy. First up, mathematics. And for most students, this was, without a doubt, the main villain of the day. It wasn't just about how hard it was a flat-out battle against the clock. And you know what? The story was the same across both shifts. Math was the undisputed time killer. Success wasn't just about knowing your calculus or your 3D geometry, it was a brutal test of execution speed. The numerical questions especially were just unforgiving. They demanded absolute precision under insane time pressure. So next, we have physics. And let me tell you, after the marathon of the math section, physics felt like a breath of fresh air for a lot of people. It was that balanced, predictable middle ground. The big difference here was its formula-based nature, right? Unlike those marathon calculations in math, physics questions were mostly just direct applications of concepts. If you had your formulas for mechanics, current electricity, and modern physics down cold, you could score well and, just as important, you could score fast. This section was a huge opportunity to claw back some time and really boost your overall score. And that brings us to chemistry. And look, if physics was an opportunity, chemistry was basically a golden ticket. This was hands down the section where students could bank the most marks in the least amount of time. So what's the key takeaway here? The NCERT textbook was king. Seriously. So many questions, especially in things like organic chemistry and chemical bonding, felt like they were lifted straight from core concepts in the standard curriculum. This wasn't about tricky problems, it was a test of your fundamentals. A strong grasp of NCERT was the fastest path to a high score. Period. Okay, so we've seen the big picture. Now let's zoom in and get our hands dirty. We're going to walk through the logic of a couple of actual problems that showed up on the test, starting with one from chemistry. Okay, take a look at this. It's a classic organic chemistry puzzle. We've got this unknown starting compound. We'll call it A. When it reacts one way, it forms tetralin. When it reacts another way, it forms phthalic acid. So your mission is to figure out the structure of A. So what's the strategy? This is what we call a retrosynthesis problem. The key is to work backward from the products. You use the reactions themselves as clues to figure out what the original structure had to be. Each reaction tells us something really specific about compound A. Let's break it down step by step. So clue number one, the hydrogenation reaction, it reduces a double bond but leaves that stable benzene ring alone. Since the product is tetralin, we know A has to have a benzene ring and a double bond somewhere in that second ring.
Now for the second clue, the strong oxidation. The product phthalic acid tells us that the original compound had two carbons attached to the benzene ring right next to each other. So when you combine those two clues, there's really only one possible answer.
And there it is, 1,2-dihydronaphthalene. You can see how it perfectly fits both clues, right? The double bond in that second ring gets hydrogenated to form tetraline, and the strong oxidation breaks that same ring to form phthalic acid. It's a beautiful piece of chemical detective work. And here is the pro tip that makes problems like this so much faster to solve. You have to recognize that hot KMNO4 is a standard test for identifying fused aromatic rings. It's a huge shortcut. The aromatic part survives, the other part gets oxidized. Seeing that pattern, it saves precious minutes. Okay, let's switch gears to physics. Here we've got a uniform rod just hanging horizontally, supported by two strings. And then, bam, the string on the right is cut. The question is, in that exact instant, what is the tension in the left string? And trust me, it's not as simple as you might think.
See, the moment that string is cut, the rod doesn't just fall straight down. It starts to rotate. So we have to think about both linear motion and rotational motion. By setting up the force equation for the center of mass and the torque equation, and then linking them together, we can solve for the tension. And the math works out super cleanly to 1/4 of the rod's weight, or mg/4.
And here's the real lesson. I mean, while you can derive the answer from scratch, the top performers, they recognize this classic setup. Knowing that a horizontal rod with one support cut always results in an initial tension of mg/4 is a massive time saver. These are the kinds of shortcuts that separate the good scores from the great ones. So, after deconstructing the exam, diving into the problems, what does it all mean? What's the big takeaway here? How do you turn all this analysis into a winning strategy for your own preparation? Here's the final blueprint. 1. Make the NCERT chemistry textbook your absolute best friend. That's where the easy, direct marks are. 2. For physics, drill those formulas until they are second nature. It's a race of speed and accuracy. 3. For math, you have to build stamina. That means practicing long, multi-step problems under timed conditions. 4. Just like we saw, look for those patterns and shortcuts. And finally, review previous year's papers. The themes, and hey, sometimes the exact questions, they do repeat. So, we've broken down the strategy, we've broken down the subjects and the solutions. The structure of the challenge is now crystal clear. The only question left is, are you ready to meet it?